Hi students, welcome back to the next and the last video of this chapter wherein we will discuss some questions as well as we'll do a quick revision of the chapter. Moving on to the questions. Okay, so the very first question says that write in your own words two or more sentences of what you understand by the word marginalization. So let's recall. I will tell you what is marginalization in a very simple language. Okay, so marginalization refers to the exclusion of a particular group or society from the entire society because of the differences in their religion, language, or the standard of living, which leads to devoid of the cultural and social development in their lives. Due to marginalization, communities which are being marginalized get less access to the resources, they get less equal rights than the majority community, and therefore the process through which the communities which are marginalized get into the corner of the entire society, they get at the margins of the entire society because they are being excluded. So basically marginalization is a process through which communities, there are some communities which get excluded from the entire society and they are put at the margins and the corners of the entire society, and the communities which are being marginalized are called as marginalized communities, for example Adivasis and Muslim communities. Moving on. Okay, so this was the next question, which says list two reasons why Adivasis are becoming increasingly marginalized. So the two reasons why Adivasis are becoming increasingly marginalized are, the very first reason is because people have stereotyped Adivasis. People have assumed that they are primitive, they are exotic, and they are backward. Now, what do we mean by exotic, primitive, and backward? They have already assumed in their minds that they wear different costumes and they wear different weird kind of headgears and do weird dances all the time. And they have also assumed that since they look different, they have assumed that they have lack of education, they have lack of knowledge about the technology advancement, and they do not know how to conduct a life as theirs. Okay, so they have already stereotyped in their minds that Adivasis are backward. They do not know anything. They are technologically backward. They have a lack of education, and they always wear these weird costumes and weird kind of headgears and dances. Okay, so these are the stereotypes which the people have created in their minds, due to which they feel that they're different from them, and that is why they are being excluded from the society. They are being put at the margins and the corners of the society. The very second reason why Adivasis are becoming increasingly marginalized is because of the forest rules, which made them migrate to the cities in hunt of the work. Since they were being forced to move out from their forest land where they have lived for so many years, they were being asked to move from that land, and when in the hunt for work they migrated to the villages and the cities, since they looked different, they appeared different, they were being offered work like as a construction worker or a domestic helper, a maid in their houses of the urban areas and urban people's house. So they were being offered such kinds of work, and when they were being offered such kind of work, these kinds of work basically pushed them into the vicious cycle of poverty. They made them poor. These kind of work are assumed to be the work of lower caste, and they are very they are highly less paid kinds of work. And so since they were offered these kind of work, because they tend to look different and people assume that obviously they do not know anything, so they will be offered these kinds of work only. And when they were offered these kinds of work, they were paid highly less. And since they were paid highly less, they automatically were pushed into the vicious cycle of poverty. They became poorer and poorer and poorer, and thus they were already marginalized from the society. First, because they tend to look different, and second, because since they tend to look different, they were offered such kind of works. When they were offered such kind of works, they were paid that way, and when they were paid that way, they were automatically pushed to the lower sections of the society, and they got excluded, they got marginalized. Okay, moving on. Write one reason why you think that the Constitution safeguards to protect minority communities are very important. Now we know what are minority communities, right? Any community which is lesser in number is known as minority community. And it is quite obvious that any community which is lesser in number will be less powerful. And so it was quite possible that these less powerful group of people were culturally dominated by the more powerful group of people, that is the majority community. So in order to safeguard these minority communities from being culturally dominated, it was very important for the constitution to safeguard them. Okay, and so they were also safeguarded because since they were culturally dominated, it led to access to less resources, it led to access to less equal rights, and so they were also eventually devoid of the social and the economic development. Okay, so in order to safeguard all this, the constitution had to protect them, right? It was very important for the constitution to safeguard these minority communities because they were being dominated, and because they were being dominated, they were getting less access to the resources as the majority community. They were not given equal rights, they were devoid of the social and the economic development as the majority community, and that is why it was important for this for the constitution to safeguard such minority communities. Okay, would you agree with the statement that economic marginalization and social marginalization are interlinked, and why? Yeah, I do agree with the statement that economic marginalization and social marginalization are interlinked. Let's understand why. So let's take the example of Adivasis. When Adivasis were asked to move out from their forest lands, obviously they were offered work as the construction worker or domestic help in the people's house because they tend to look different. Also because they were being stereotyped that since they look different and they belong to forest, obviously they don't know anything about the technology and education. So obviously they would be offered such kinds of work. And since they were offered such kinds of work, they were pushed into the vicious cycle of poverty, right? This similar example I gave you in the previous question also, this will also could apply to this question. This is just an example as to how economic marginalization and social marginalization are interlinked. And this example you can also give in your examination in order to make your teacher understand how they are interlinked. So coming back to the example, that when they were given such kinds of work, they were obviously automatically pushed into the vicious cycle of poverty, and they became poorer and poorer and poorer, which eventually led to economic marginalization also. Because of the social marginalization, which is stereotyping, this they also were pushed to economic marginalization. So social marginalization led to economic marginalization. In order to make you understand the statement better, let's take another example. Let's take the example of Muslims. So as I also told you, as I also gave you an example wherein there is a shop in a society and this a person who is Hindu, does not go to that shop, avoid going to that shop just because that the owner of that shop is a Muslim. So here basically that person, this Hindu person, the person who is Hindu is avoiding to go to that shop because he thinks that Muslims are quite different from them, and that is why he's socially marginalizing him. That is, he's avoiding any kind of social interaction with him, right? He's excluding him from the society. He's avoiding to go in his shop. And this is basically social marginalization, that he's not going to his shop just because that he is Muslim, just because he has assumed that he is different from him. So this is basically excluding someone from the society. This is basically putting them at the corners, at the margins. If he will do, many people will follow, and eventually they will be excluded. Nobody, if he wouldn't go to his shop, eventually many people would see and follow him. Maybe not, or maybe, but if they does follow, then nobody will. There will be a point where when nobody will come to his shop, and he will be automatically pushed from the society. He will be automatically excluded from the society. So this is social marginalization. Now it is quite obvious that if nobody will go to his shop, he will be economically marginalized. Economic marginalization is when you are poor, when you are in the vicious cycle of poverty, right? When you are in the lower sections of the society, that is economic marginalization. When nobody will buy products from his shop, he will eventually get poorer and poorer and poorer, and will push into the society which is very poor. Thus, he will be economically marginalized. Now, here economic marginalization and social marginalization are very well interlinked, wherein that this person who is avoiding to go to his shop is socially marginalizing him, and due to social marginalization, that is leading to economic marginalization. Now I hope that you understood how social economic marginalization and social marginalization are very well interlinked. Moving on. Okay, this ends to the series of questions. Now let's start the quick revision. Okay, so marginalization is when groups of people or communities are being excluded from the majority. Very well said. As I told you, that marginalization is nothing but excluding a particular minority community from the society, that is putting them at the corners or at the margins of the society, not giving them equal rights, not giving them the equal access to the resources as majority community are getting. The pre-colonial Adivasis were hunters, nomads, or trading in forest produce. They practiced shifting cultivation. Now, after understanding the definition of marginalization, we understood that there are some communities which are being marginalized, and Adivasis are one of those communities. Adivasis are basically the people who live closely in the forest. That is why they are also known as Girvasis and Vanvasis. Now, they live closest to the forest. So basically, it is quite obvious that if they will live in the forest, they will be hunters, or they will be nomads, or they will basically earn money through doing work in the forest. And they used to be hunters, they used to be nomads, they used to practice shifting cultivation. But that happened until 19th century, after which there was an introduction of the new forest laws, new economic policies, wherein they were asked to shift from their forest lands. Okay, and recent developments have forced the Adivasis to migrate in search of the alternate livelihoods. Now, when there was an introduction of the new forest laws, all the Adivasis were asked to move from their forest lands, because new industries were to be set up in those forest lands, because of due to, to develop the country more. Okay, moving on. So when they were asked to move out from the society, they migrated to cities and villages, wherein they were automatically pushed to the vicious cycle of the poverty. The communities which are numerically small in relation to the rest of the population are known as minorities. The Constitution of India provides safeguards to protect minority communities. Now we understood how Adivasis got marginalized, that they were asked to migrate from the city, and when they migrated to the city, they were automatically socially marginalized, because they tend to look different, because people stereotype them. And since they tend to look different, they were given work like that, which were not very highly paid. It was very less paid. It was not respected, and that is why they automatically got economically and socially marginalized. They automatically got marginalized in the city. Now, this was one of the examples. There is one other community also, which is a minority community, which also got marginalized, which is a Muslim community. Now, any community which is lesser in number is known as a minority community. Muslims are a religious minority and a marginalized group in India. Now, Muslims were also marginalized, and thus there was a committee which was set up in 2005 in order to know how marginalized or the Muslims are, like to basically to come to know the status of the Muslims. Okay, and guess what that report said? That report said that 25% of the Muslims have either dropped out of the school, or they have never gone to the school. Basically, the children ranging from the age group of 6 to 14 have either not gone to the school, or they have dropped from the school. Okay, 25% of the Muslim population ranging in the age group between 6 to 14 have either never gone to the school, or they have dropped out from the school. And their situation is so worse that it is comparable to the situation of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Now you can assume what that report said and how worse the situation was of Muslims. Now, marginalization can take the form of other dimensions like prejudice or ghettoization of the community. Now we understood how Muslims were marginalized, how Adivasis were marginalized. Now let's understand that what were the actual consequences of marginalized. Now, because they were marginalized, there would have been some consequences of it too, right? Okay, let's now understand that. So basically, since two communities we read about are marginalized, this led to ghettoization. That means because they were socially and economically marginalized, they used to feel very insecure between in the center of the society. That is why they decided to move out from the center of the society and live at the corner, at the margins of the society with their people. Like you might have seen, there are some societies wherein only Muslims live, or there are some places where you could see only Muslim community living there and no other religious community. People of no other religious community live there. Only Muslims live there, or only Jains live there. So basically, what people do now, what minority communities do, they make their own place where they feel safe and they live with only the people of their community. So this is basically known as ghettoization, moving from the center of the state and making your own place where you feel safe. Marginalized communities want to maintain their cultural distinctiveness while having access to rights, development, and other opportunities. Now, after all this, after we have read what is marginalization, which communities are being marginalized, how are they being marginalized, and what are the consequences of marginalization, after all this, what do the marginalized communities want? Obviously, they do not want to get marginalized. They want to get equal rights as majority community. They want to be the part of the society. They want to promote their culture while getting equal rights, while getting equal access to the resources, while getting equal opportunities for the social, cultural, and economical development for their society, for their community. Also, it's not like they just do not want to be the part of the society, and they just do not want to be the part of any opportunity. They want that properly. They just do not want people to accept them. They also want people to accept them, and with that, they also want the equal opportunity and equal rights as they are getting. They just do not want to live amongst all the society, amongst all the majority community, but they just, like, what I'm trying to say is that they just do not want to be the part of the society physically. They also want to be the part of the society wherein they're also living with the society. Also, they are getting equal rights, equal opportunities, equal access to the resources, equal respect, and equal opportunity for the social, cultural, and economic development. So this brings us to the end of the chapter. We'll connect in the next video in the next chapter. By then, thank you so much for joining me on Study Plan.